Welcome to This Week in Local, a Localogy podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Localogy analysts Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Charles Laughlin, senior analyst at Localogy, joined by Mike Boland. Mike, how's it going today?
Hey, Charlie. Going well.
Great. So what do you got for us this week, Mike?
So I, like many other folks, are looking at Apple Vision Pro now that it's finally out. A lot of noise, a lot of opinion, a lot of hot takes. We're taking a more sort of practical route and really looking hard at, like, what is this device? Who is it meant for? And then more importantly, how does it fit into sort of Apple's future-proofing long game for its hardware business? And sort of the TLDR version is that Apple, sort of true to form, is really playing a long game here. Don't dwell on the device's, specs and its price tag out of the box, but rather its sort of role in a signature Apple product lifecycle. So sort of jumping right in and starting with the price tag, that's sort of been the most contentious point. At $3,500 as a starting point, there are pundits all over the place that are like proclaiming that they're not going to buy it. And, guess what? No one cares, especially Apple. This device is to really plant a flag in the sand for a first generation device, and to do so Apple's way. And that requires, demonstrating what's possible at any cost. And then it's going to sort of refine that over years and years and years. It's going to lower costs. It's going to boost the capability. But interestingly, what they've done here that's different than like a signature Apple product lifecycle is they sort of flipped the script by launching with a Pro device. I mean, it's right there in the title, Apple Vision Pro. And then all signs point to them launching something over the next few years that is sort of, lower powered device, cheaper, and it appeals more to sort of consumers. And again, that's sort of the inverse sequence. But another key point here is to look at Apple's motivations. And this is our sort of classic follow the money approach. I think if you can answer the question of why, you can start to triangulate the what and the how. So if we step back, Apple's sort of game plan in general these days is all about revenue diversification. We talk about that a lot on this show. Their cash cow, the iPhone, is sort of, maturing. The whole smartphone market where it resides is maturing. There's revenue deceleration. So Apple has to find other ways to maintain growth, which is sort of a tall order considering its revenue base. So the answer to that dilemma so far has been two things: wearables and services. And Vision Pro feeds into and fuels both of those things. So let's take those one at a time. So for wearables, revenue growth every quarter sort of comes close to sort of offsetting the declines that they're seeing with the iPhone. So for that reason, wearables are a sort of a big deal. They have a lot of political capital in Cupertino as a division, as a product line. And Vision Pro sort of fits into and fuels wearables in that it sort of supplements the sensory experiences in watch and AirPods and spatial audio and, watch-driven biometrics. There's things like immersive fitness and wellness and all these other things. And it's sort of Apple's signature device continuity / ecosystem approach, which is sort of pursuant to greater ARPU for them. Now, moving on to services, that second big area, that most notably includes entertainment, like Apple TV Plus. And Vision Pro, of course, is positioned as sort of an elite and immersive consumption experience. This was like Apple's one of their biggest point of emphasis in the Vision Pro marketing and unveiling so far. So we're talking massive virtual screens and serene viewing environments. It very much feeds into that sort of subscription-based content business unit at Apple. And I think within that, a very important use case that I think is going to develop is around spectator sports. So we're talking like immersive courtside seats for 180-degree immersive viewing. And you can kind of connect those dots if you look at the fact that Apple acquired a company called NextVR a few years ago, which does exactly this. They place these stereoscopic cameras in the front row at basketball games. And then Apple also has MLS streaming rights and MLB, and it's in discussion with the NBA. You can connect all these dots that it's looking at this sort of front row seat, sort of premium viewing experience for these just rich, immersive sort of sporting use cases. And you can picture them, sort of integrating that into their subscription business in a really meaningful way and in a really scalable way. And then beyond entertainment, we could see similar sort of disruptions that include healthcare and enterprise productivity and communications and social interaction and, again, fitness and wellness. And all this will take a while. That's the underlying point. We're talking years for these things to sort of penetrate both culturally and economically and the price coming down. But you can sort of glimpse the future of where Apple's going with this. And again, I think that's the main point here. Now, the last thing I'll say is that in the meantime, the device is not off to a bad start. I think I mentioned this in the last episode. About 200,000 units sold in pre-orders, according to some reliable estimates. Nowhere near iPhone scale, but it's a decent start. It's eclipsed all analyst estimates so far, and just has sort of meaningful momentum out of the gate, which I think also says something. So lots more to say, but I'll pause there. And those are some of the concepts I'm looking at and just triangulating the future of this device.
So I think also when we spoke about this last week, I asked you if you're going to try it, and you said you were going to go to an Apple store and kind of do a demo that they've arranged for anyone, right? Have you done that yet?
I haven't, but one more thing to say about that, because we did talk about that last week.
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing that Apple's doing here is it's going to be one of those prices. I always compare it to Tesla in the early days,
right,
where it was cost prohibitive, it was supply constrained, it was this very scarce elite thing. And the price tag was part of that, constrained demand, but a lot of other things fed into that. So this just sort of the product persona it took on as this elite thing ended up fueling years and years of Tesla sales up till including today.
Right.
When the price came down, the price came down, the supply went up, but that just sort of first impression.
Yeah.
So Apple's going to be doing that. And along those lines, this gets back to your question about the sales experience in store. They're doing this sort of velvet rope type of sales experience where you make an appointment. It's almost like when you go to test drive a car. You have to make an appointment. You go in, you spend time with the sales rep. They have these little 20-minute demos of this velvet rope experience where it's a guided thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope to do before I decide if I'm actually going to buy V1.
Yeah. And you get all the arrogance of the Apple Store service too.
Exactly.
Sure. The Tesla point is interesting because it is true that the price of I forget the 3 or whatever the base model is of a Tesla, it's not a cheap car, but it's not a Mercedes, it's.
Oh no, you can get a entry model Model 3 with a price that starts with 4, right? With a number that starts with 4, right?
Which is not crazy for cars anymore. It used to be. But I think it still has that elite impression that it leaves with many people.
Yeah.
And so to your point, that's a fair point. And that comes from how it's rolled out. Right. So I think, even when these things are $500 instead of, what is it now? $3,500?
$3,500. I don't think it'll ever get down to 500.
Well,
I'm looking at
maybe 1,000, whatever it does.
I'm looking at 1,500 as the eventual probably realistic target, because the thing probably
settle into that range, whatever it is. Once it's there, it'll probably still be seen as have the same sort of sensibility around it that it does out the gate. And that's the magic of Apple, right? I mean, the computer prices come down. They're never cheap, but they come way down.
Yeah. Well, the first Mac, we just celebrated the 40th anniversary. Yeah. In inflation adjusted dollars, it was about $7,000.
Yeah, which is nuts.
Which is 2 times what we're talking about here for Vision Pro. The other thing is this concept of people are going a little overboard in terms of those that are effusively in support of it. We see a lot of sort of on both sides, but the people in support are saying, well, this will replace your iPhone. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the device this is going to replace in terms of its use case and where it sits in that sort of continuum of devices you have, all the way from your desktop to your laptop to your tablet to your phone. I think it's going to basically replace where tablets currently sit in people's lives in terms of being a
Okay.
supplementary device for some work stuff and some entertainment.
So I mean, I hate to even raise the issue. They're sort of knowing, consciously cannibalizing a product of their own, which is probably one they're willing to cannibalize, right? And if that's even part of their thinking, I mean, I'm trying to think, what will the primary use case of this thing be once the price point reaches a mass adoption, as close to a mass adoption price point as an Apple product
Yeah.
ever reaches, right?
Well, it'll
Uh,
be supplementary. That's the
yeah,
key word in the previous comment I made, is that
yeah,
this isn't going to replace your phone. It's not going to replace your TV. That's another thing people are saying,
right.
for
I
one
don't see that.
simple reason. And that is, it is a solo viewing experience.
Right.
Like for urban single dudes, sure. But
Sure.
like you think of most like
Who
sort
want to
of
remain single?
yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. Most like sort of like TV night or movie
Yeah.
night or whatever. Like, it's a sort of gathering. It's a communal experience, and everyone looks
Right.
at the same screen.
Mhm.
So I think having a Vision Pro will be supplementary for when you're traveling, for
Mhm.
when you're by yourself and want to lay on the couch and have just this massive immersive sort
Yeah.
of IMAX like experience. Sure, but you're not gonna like not have your TV anymore.
I'm trying to picture the family gathered in the living room, all of them wearing these things to have a, movie night.
Yeah, and the
Family movie.
economics don't work, 'cause currently you buy one TV. You don't buy
Yeah,
one TV for every
exactly.
person in the room.
That is,
Yeah.
a rich family.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you also mentioned sporting events, and I'm trying to imagine how the sports viewing experience changes with this device. You
Yeah,
ever
that's
think?
also a communal thing. So
Yeah,
they're gonna have to think of a way around that. And again, it'll be like something for certain situations or certain people.
yeah.
It's not gonna replace a Super Bowl party. You're not gonna have a
I was
Super
about
Bowl
to
party
say,
with
is next year's Super Bowl going to
yeah.
be available on the Vision Pro? And
Oh, I bet it will be,
yeah,
but it's not gonna replace, everyone huddled around the TV,
no,
like,
you're still
eating
can't.
nachos.
No, I think that experience is almost independent of the Super Bowl game itself.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Now, my first thought was that this is going to replace gaming consoles, or in some sense, or that it somehow becomes that gaming becomes a primary use case. You're not really seeing it as a gaming thing as much.
Well, no, well, only because Apple hasn't really emphasized that, but I
They're
think
not.
that
That's
use
not really
case
their thing as much, right?
yeah, that use case will creep in, but they do have Apple Games, which has been sort of a big thing on various devices and on
But
Apple
people don't think
TV.
Apple games. That's not really.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you pair a Bluetooth remote to your, Apple TV or whatever other device, and you can have gaming experiences. The
Yeah.
problem with Vision Pro is that they want to position it as something that is a native experience that is very immersive.
Hmm.
And you also have this industry out there led by Meta, which is gaming on VR devices.
Right.
Unfortunately, those experience can't port over to the Vision Pro because the Vision Pro doesn't have controllers. All
Yeah.
those games, they've been developed specifically for these handheld controllers
Yeah.
that are meant to represent like your hands in a boxing game or the
Yeah.
like the lightsabers in Beat Saber. And they're just Apple does not have that equivalent hardware, so
Right.
they're not portable. All of those experiences aren't portable over. So developers are going to have to start from scratch in building things that are highly immersive and 3D gaming experiences where your hands are the controllers, because
Yeah.
that's
I'm just
currently how
wondering.
it's
Yeah.
done.
If this is Apple's way into gaming further than it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it can just mirror your screen the same
Yeah.
way you would mirror your screen to watch a movie and pair a Bluetooth gamepad and simply have the same experience you would, but instead of a movie, you're playing a game through your console.
Right.
It's essentially just mirroring your screen in this immersive environment. And suddenly you have a 120-inch TV and it
Mhm.
just sort of up levels that experience, but it's still a flat 2D screen.
Kind of. Yeah. Final question on this. I don't know if you've been consuming kind of the feedback about this that's been coming out so far.
Mhm.
If you could summarize it in some way for us, sort of the
Yeah,
pros and
it's
cons.
a lot of professional reviewers are saying that this thing is damn impressive, right?
Mhm.
It still has some sort of social hurdles to get over, such as getting people to wear the toaster on your face
You've
and other
you've
things like
said
that.
that for years, that putting things on your face is a
Yeah.
real barrier.
Right. So they've said a lot of things similar to what I've said so far, which is
Mhm.
this thing is giving us sort of a glimpse into the future. Apple wants to
Yeah.
demonstrate what's possible, and you can start to see that when you strap it on. However, there are too many sort of physical, practical barriers in the way for this thing
Mhm.
in its current form to become mainstream. But again, this is Apple's demonstration of what's possible in V1. Once it gets down to a sleeker format, a more consumer, mass market viable format, with this experience it has demonstrated with this, then you have a winner. That's sort of the take, that the
Yeah.
consensus so far among a lot of professional reviewers.
Okay. Now, one thing I saw, I flipped on the TV when I got up Saturday, and Kara Swisher was on CNN wearing this thing.
Yep.
And one of the people she was on with was saying, "Oh my God, this is so isolating."
Yeah.
Talking to you with that thing on, I just don't feel right talking. It's kind of puts you in a box. And Kara's comment was, eventually this will just be a pair of glasses. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
it will. She's right. It'll be a cultural acclimation thing. It will be a big one. It'll take a while to
Uh-huh.
get over, but it will be one of those sort of generational slash, sort of conditioning, long-term conditioning sort of things where, it was very weird when people were wearing Bluetooth headsets and walking around seeming like they were talking to themselves in the early
Right.
days of the.
No one liked that. And,
Yeah.
but that's kind of gone away. Now people they're using the
AirPods.
AirPods. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really gone away, but it's become very normal. You're right.
Yeah. Or
But
cell phones in general.
do you think Apple's goal is to miniaturize this to a point where it becomes almost like eyeglasses? I mean, that was her comment. I think she was guessing. I
Yeah,
have no.
yeah, that's where they wanna go. However, that will require some UX trade-offs.
Yeah, I imagine so.
We look at things like Moore's Law, which
Yeah.
defines the course of technology innovation that you see in any chip-based technology. So what's in your
Mhm.
TV, what's in your computer. That's why things go down in price over the years and get smaller. With something like the Vision Pro and augmented reality in general, some of it follows the course of Moore's Law, but actually some of it does not. Some of it is
Mhm.
constrained by physical sort of reality, such as the way light
Well,
moves. So
you
I don't
can
think
only
you're ever
shrink
gonna get.
things so much, right? You can
Yeah.
only,
So
yeah.
right, you're not going to get like a pair of Ray-Bans that does all this, but you're going
Mhm.
to get a pair of Ray-Bans that does some pretty cool things that they're going to work around
Right.
those design challenges that involves AI and sort of makes you aware of your surroundings. And the glimmers of that you can start to see are in Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses,
Mhm.
are made by Meta. And right now they don't have an optical and a display system with augmented reality, but they do have a little whisper in your ear, and they have a
Uh-huh.
camera, and they can tell you the thing you're looking at is a street sign that is in Japanese. Here's the translation. Or the dog you were looking at is a mix between a Shih Tzu and a Schnauzer. And,
I
it's
don't know
this
what
sort of
that is.
informative sort of
A
layer on the
Schnitzel.
world. Or I was going to say
Um,
a bulldog and a Shih Tzu. That's the
yeah.
cross.
Okay. We'll just move on from there. Okay, Mike. We'll have more to say about this, I'm sure. Um, one final thought is maybe it'll be a two-tier thing where there'll be the miniaturized version that people wear who are vain and only want to wear
Oh, yeah,
sunglasses.
they'll be both.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's going to be two tracks here. I don't think they're possible in the same device is my point, that we're going to have
Right. Right.
something
And two,
larger for
yeah,
indoor and enterprise use
right.
and something smaller,
Something to
toned
walk
down in
down the
UX.
sidewalk in New York City,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, Mike. I'm just going to quickly talk about a different topic, and that is a company we're both familiar with called Placer.ai. Basically, they're a location data firm. There's been a lot of these companies, as we were talking about earlier before we recorded. There's a lot of these companies that do variations on this, and there's been a lot of consolidation, et cetera, going on. Companies like Ground Truth, which used to be XAD, Ninth Decimal, I guess that was acquired by In Market, I think, and Place IQ, and companies have come and gone, been acquired, been rolled up and renamed, repositioned, and so on and so forth. But what Placer does is, they collect data that tells you sort of how much traffic is going, among other things, how much traffic is going through a retail location. So for example, if a retail business wants to open a new store and they want to measure sort of the traffic data to see, is this new store cannibalizing traffic from an existing store 2 blocks away or something? There's a zillion other use cases, but that's sort of one loose example. And then it expands into other things like uh, for example, if you're a commercial real estate company and you want to understand how properties are performing in your portfolio, this data source can be valuable, and so on and so forth. So Placer has been doing some really interesting things lately with some of the partnerships that it's been putting together, and it's announced one fairly recently with a company called Esri, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't if I'm going to pronounce any of the companies I'm about to mention correctly, so that maybe they can correct me later if I get anything wrong. But Esri is a geographic information systems technology company, and Placer is a data company essentially. So these two have formed a partnership basically to marry the technology strength with the data to develop new products that sort of stretch the ways in which this sort of data can be displayed and used and increase the number of applications. So they basically created this partnership to develop new products, which they will be rolling out soon. So we'll see what really comes from this one. It could be groundbreaking. It could be, who knows? But it's building on a string of partnerships that Placer's been doing that kind of suggest it's really becoming a leading player in this space, which again, as I noted, is pretty crowded. Forgot to mention Foursquare as well, kind of works in that space as well. One of the partnerships kind of touches on an area that we haven't talked about a lot on the pod, but certainly is within our area. And that is with a company called Vibenomics or Vibenomics. I'm not sure which it is. And they're basically a retail media company. So, retail media is a very hot area, and the data Placer has really is, powerful stream of data that can help know whether the ads are performing, whether they're being priced correctly, whether they're delivering on what they're promised, and also just to fine tune the whole process of placing the right ad in front of the right customer at the right time. So that marrying sort of the display capability with the data capability is an obvious, powerful combination. And another partnership that it put together last year was with a company called Finance Lobby, which is basically a commercial real estate finance marketplace. Basically, if a mortgage broker wants to find a lender to, complete a loan, et cetera. And obviously, sort of, if you're in the commercial real estate business, you want to know the traffic numbers. You want to know if this real piece of property is performing, as I sort of mentioned before. So that's kind of an obvious connection there as well. So really what we're seeing is all these partnerships are sort of expanding the use of this kind of data, both in terms of applications of the data, and then, sort of through this Esri partnership, ultimately the way the data is displayed and used. So, it's just kind of this building story of Placer's growing importance in this space.
Yeah, I think what this underscores is the potential expansiveness of the location intelligence space where Placer.ai and several others that you named, where they play. And because I think traditionally it was used in sort of a marketing context, right? I mean, like you said, to deliver the right ad to the right person, but then also to work on sort of attribution, post-impression attribution, and the foot traffic of where someone went, did they go to the store, et cetera. And I think busting out of that marketing realm or expanding beyond it, staying still there, but expanding into other areas is the cool thing here. And there are two use cases that I always thought were sort of untapped for the location intelligence space. One of them is for sort of finance and investing, and particularly like day traders and hedge fund managers who want to get sort of an inside track on the information ahead of a company's earnings. So say you're talking about Target or Walmart, and to be able to have an inside track on the intelligence of their foot traffic. And, the old school version of this was like hedge fund managers that used to like look at satellite imagery to see the number of cars in the parking lot at Walmart throughout the quarter and then extrapolate, what their sales are going to be. And
they
therefore
don't have to do the satellites anymore.
Yeah, right. But anyway, so that's one, just that sort of finance angle. It's not a big one, but it's a cool one.
Yeah.
The second one is franchise development, which is, large multi-location brands like McDonald's and Jack in the Box and whomever that want to be able to like scout out their next location. And they can be able to tell with this type of data, like we over-index for brand affinity in this particular, region or corner of the state, but we under-index in our presence there. So like that new strip mall going up is actually going to be a perfect place for us to like, put our next location, that type of stuff.
I think that is kind of just another version of how, when I say retail, I use that broadly, and it includes restaurants, includes a lot of
Sure.
basically any physical location. They mentioned brokerage firms as a customer base of theirs on their
Yeah.
website.
And that sort of sits
Yeah,
under the real estate thing that you said, but just to
yeah.
draw that out further.
Real estate, retail, and real estate, they're they're basically two sides of the same coin, or however you want to put that.
Yep.
But essentially, just all the ways you can think of this data being used, I would imagine they either are being used or it's being, marketed as such, or at least it's on it's on a whiteboard somewhere. For example, if you're a store and you just want to know, and I think this is even being done now, it's, a remodeling, was it effective? Did it change in the store layout, increase traffic, decrease traffic, et cetera? Changing it. I know, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I know it's kind of been on the, either something we written about, et cetera. How reviews are used in similar ways. And it's like, should you fire the store manager because of what your review traffic is telling you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Foot traffic can, provide similar sorts of insights,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of power in this data.
That's
And
why a company you mentioned, Ground Truth, changed
Mhm.
its name to Ground Truth. They're tracking the sort of truth on the ground in terms of
Yeah,
foot traffic.
right, right. Yeah. Anyway, so I just kind of wanted to bring that up as a, you know, shout out for Placer for having a pretty important string of partnership announcements, and
Mhm.
it seems like they're really killing it. So that's pretty much it on that one. Mike, do you have a Who Won the Week?
Yeah, I'm gonna choose Meta because of its Q4 earnings
Mm-hmm.
announced last week. Breakout quarter. They had 25% year over year revenue growth.
Yeah.
Expenses decreased because of some real bloodletting at the company over the last year, and particularly in Q4.
Mm-hmm.
Their expenses decreased 8% year over year, while the revenues jumped 25%. Um, and the stock price definitely showed Wall Street sort of satisfaction with those
Yeah.
results. I mean, it really jumped. I say that in full disclosure as a Meta shareholder.
Yeah.
Um, but
Not
they're
financial advice.
yeah, they right. So they're sort of back to their former glory after having about a year of really sort of declining. And then I'll say briefly, Meta Reality Labs, which is its VR and AR division. They have Quest 2, Quest 3, Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses. I mentioned all those devices earlier. All of
Mm-hmm.
those sit under that division. It crossed $1 billion in revenue for the first time.
Wow.
Its expenses are still stacked up pretty high. It's operating at a net loss, but it is proving demand. It's validating demand in the market with $1 billion in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And this also kind of validates something I've been saying, where we're hearing a lot of narratives around the broader Vision Pro discussion, where people are saying, well, now Meta's screwed because their Quest 3 and Quest 2, Quest 3 being their latest device, is sort of going to just, fall at the feet of like Apple's superior product. And I've been saying this whole time, no, I mean, Vision Pro is the best thing that ever happened to
Right.
Meta and its sort of all these devices we're talking about, because Apple, like it does, is going to, its halo effect in mainstreaming emerging tech is going to accelerate the entire industry, from which Meta is going to benefit, particularly because it is a much lower cost player. It's going to absorb a lot of that demand at the lower end, given that, Quest 3 is a $500 device, which is
Mm-hmm.
1/7 the price of
Right.
Vision Pro. So look for that to continue in terms of like Apple or Meta's going to actually benefit from this, not
Sort of like the two gas stations on the same corner thing.
yeah,
Right.
that's exactly right. So anyway, Meta won the week.
Okay, cool. Mine is very quick. Sochi. We learned yesterday that the recent G2 2024 Best Software Awards, Sochi ranked in 7 categories. Sochi is a digital marketing platform. We cover quite a bit here. Big presence at our events, big presence on Localogy Insider. I just want a quick shout out to them. They seem to have done pretty well in this latest round of awards, which basically just rank the best software providers in a variety of categories. They ranked best overall software product, AI product, marketing and digital advertising, and a bunch of others. So, pretty good outcome for them. I just want to give them a quick shout out. So, Mike, you want to read us out?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie, and thanks everyone for listening. This has been This Week in Local. Stay tuned every week for more episodes. You can find the show on all major podcast networks and find out more at Localogy.com. So please subscribe, like, and comment. Your engagement helps others find us. And if you're interested in being a guest or sponsor, you can email us at podcast@Localogy.com. So I'm Mike Boland with Charles Laughlin. Our producer is Dara Sweat. So thanks for listening and see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Localogy's This Week in Local with Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin. Be sure to subscribe for more.